In trial work, just like in anything that's story related, and there's so many things in life that are, it's about the relationship.
You know, a lot of attorney entrepreneurs come from dysfunctions and trauma because this stuff is hard. The more grounded you are, the more grateful you are, the more you're going to get. But if you're always chasing that next case, that next client, it's a fool's errand.
We are kind of policing the world in our own way, in a civil way.
The Earley Show will begin after a brief word from today's sponsor, Answering Legal. Visit answeringlegal.com to learn more about our 24/7 virtual receptionist team.
I would absolutely, without question, recommend Answering Legal to every law firm. Not one law firm, but every law firm out there. I've gotten so much business as a result of hiring them. I knew that we were getting a lot of calls after hours. So I needed a company to answer those phone calls live and to get the name, number, because that's key information. All my cases are called back. Answering Legal is the best.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of The Earley Show, sponsored by our friends over at Answering Legal. As always, we bring you the very best in the legal industry. Today, we have a real treat. We have Joe Freed, who has done a very impressive job of becoming and positioning himself a subject matter expert with trucking accident cases. I look at Joe as a trial lawyer's lawyer. He's an academic with these things. He really gets into the weeds of trial, and he's very energized by trial. He's been very successful. So he's not only a really good trial lawyer, he's a very good marketer. He's marketed himself very well. And that really is something that I think a lot of lawyers miss. So really interested to talk with Joe today. So as always, make sure you sharpen your pencils. I'm sure there'll be plenty of writer-downers on this episode of The Earley Show. Joe, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Chris. I'm not sure what to do with that introduction. It's funny because I don't see myself as a very good marketer at all. But so it's going to be, but I am so happy to be here with you. And we had a few minutes before the show, and I think you're my kind of people. And so I'm really looking forward to, if I had sleeves, I'd roll them up and I'd be ready to rock and roll. So I'm looking forward to whatever this is supposed to be.
Well, the feeling is mutual. I appreciate that. I just want to share a funny story. So you came to Massachusetts recently. You spoke at the Massachusetts Academy of Trial Attorneys annual convention. And I thought you spoke and you had a very interesting approach because you would call on people. And I was like, oh my God, he's going to call on me. I felt like, law school, like the Socratic method. But I thought that's so smart because no one's going to fall asleep when you're talking because they could be, you call it being picked on. And you picked on me. I was like, oh man, I got called on. So I had a flashback to law school. I wanted to show it. I thought that was kind of funny. But I thought you did, it was very, very a finite thing you did that I noticed because I speak a lot to lawyers as well, always trying to hone my craft. And it's very interactive. So no one can fall asleep. So I like that. So I thought that was a very interesting approach to public speaking.
Well, you caught me. That's, I do it. It helps me though, because what I've learned is in trial work, just like in anything that's story related, and there's so many things in life that are, it's about the relationship, right? And so what I've learned from of one of the people who has been profound in my life, a man named Joshua Carton, who is a trial consultant, type of a person. He was an actor and director in Hollywood for many years. He taught me that we try cases to one person at a time. And that is that which is going on. Like if you and I were locked eyes in a moment that we were having together, that's witnessed by the other people. Mm-hmm. And so you're trying it to a jury of 12, but to one at a time. So the attention and the direction and the energy is very intimate. And people can't wait for you to come to them. And in your case, it was a little nerves. I'm going to get called on for for law school again. But there's something to that, right? In a way, in another way, there was probably like, I kind of hope he calls on me, but no, and I don't hope he calls him. No, at the end, yes, no, but you're anticipating it's personal, as opposed to I'm just out here and I can play on my cell phone and nobody's going to know. He's paying attention to me. I better pay attention to him. So there's a reciprocation in there.
100%. I like that one-to-one thing.
It's about an intimate relationship, no matter how many people are in the room.
Right. I like that.
I-
And I always sit in the front intentionally when I go to conferences or, presentations, because I'm going to learn more. And you could be in life, it's better to be in the front than the back, because if you're in the back, you're sort of, you're not really as involved, literally. So, but I just want to
some of your listeners would push back on that and say, no, it's much better to be in the back.
And that's
but
fair.
anyway, go.
And that's
I
fair.
agree. It's a personality thing. It tells you a lot about somebody, where they're sitting, right?
Right. So I was doing my research. Whenever I have a guest on, I've just tipped the iceberg, right, in terms of knowing your story. But I just like to, if you could share with us, growing up, mom and dad, brothers and sisters, where'd you grow up? How were you influenced at a young age? How did that kind of get you going to be successful in life? Just if you could take us back, to the start.
Wow, it's a great question. I was born in San Diego. At the time, I was born to my mom and dad were sort of old school, Depression era people, and that permeated their lives. My mom is still alive, turning 94. And she still worries if there's not the right kind of milk in the refrigerator, that she'll never see milk again ever in her life. And so you're nodding your head, so you know that mentality.
Yes. Same here. Same mindset with my mom.
My dad came up in very rough beginnings. He was a runaway and had very, very, very tough early childhood. And that was something that I give him credit now for not just being batshit crazy, and somehow getting through and becoming a physician, and one of quite significant respect in the world. But he had a really hard time, and the demons were very alive and very active at different times in life, and he struggled with substance. Is of various types, and when you're a physician, you can prescribe your own damn substances, so you can,
right?
Whether in his case, whether it was alcohol or something else. There were some very dark years. We moved from San Diego to Israel. I lived in Israel for 4 years through a war there, so I kind of what's going on there now is hits close to home. But I was, 5, 6 years old there when you're in a war there, it's not like being in a war here. I mean, there you're in a war, you're spending time actually in bomb shelters with bombs going off, air raid sirens going off at all times of the day and night, and you're running into a bomb shelter. So I got early exposure to some pretty terrifying things. At least they were for me. Like I remember my first time being paralyzed from fear. In Israel in that context, and not long after that we moved back. We moved to Muncie, New York, which is an Orthodox Jewish community.
Joe, I grew up in Fall River.
Okay, so so I was in Muncie and Spring Valley.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, I went through yeshiva. I was a yeshiva boy. I had payos, and I had which I never really felt like I belonged in that area, but I was also sort of super Jewish because I had come from Israel and I could speak Hebrew with a real accent, and So it was kind of so the things that I think about from my early childhood is that I felt very alone. I felt very apart from other people, and that's kind of a lonely place. Because wherever I was, it was kind of a little bit different. Like even when I was in an Orthodox community, I didn't really feel like I fit in there. And then we moved from there to Atlanta, Georgia, where literally I had somebody come and touch my arm and say, I had never touched a Jew before. Wow. And, and so I was in a public school setting here in Atlanta, and it wasn't terrible, but it was not, I did not feel like a part of. And so that's been a significant part of my life is struggling with that, struggling with fear, if I'm honest with you, is sometimes say that my life has been an exercise in fear management. And part of it is also that I've had a lot of experience with people in various rage states through addiction and things like that in early childhood. When we moved back from Israel, it was my dad's dream to live in Israel. When we moved back, that dream had kind of fallen apart. And those we entered some pretty dark times for my family at that point, and it took effort to sort of and time to get through that. And so my role within the family was to try to be a peacekeeper, to try to be the person who heads off those kinds of things. Those people who have lived in those scenarios will know what I'm talking about. It's I was the oldest son, and that comes with some what felt to me like requirements of the job. So they weren't always pleasant. But I think that for me, I'm also the father of an alcoholic and drug addict in recovery, thankfully. So I'm sandwiched, what does that make me? That makes me an addict, right? Probably. And I've just chosen different ways and places for that. If you're interested, I'm happy to talk about it, but I don't want to go on and on.
No, you're speaking my language, Joe. I think it's so funny that you grew up what year did you graduate high school?
84.
Okay. So you're about 10 years before me, but I grew up, for the audience, I grew up very close to, where Joe spent a large part of his youth. That's a small world. So,
yeah,
you said something about fear management. So just to back up for a second, anyone who listens to my show knows I come from trauma. I'm an adult child of an alcoholic. And I am finishing, actually, after our call, I have a call with my writing coach. I'm finishing my memoir, Joe. It's about how I succeeded despite trauma. Because when you say fear management, I took out a highlighter, I sort of bulk, because I can relate to that. I can relate to turbulence. You said your dad had a tough go of it, but he was still very successful. My father was also very successful entrepreneur in Manhattan, despite major league alcoholism, Joe, major league, the highest.
Yeah. So we probably have a lot of parallel
100%
experiences, and they're complex.
They're very complex. A lot of lawyers, Joe, I just read like a week ago, maybe this week, a lot of lawyers, a lot of attorney entrepreneurs come from dysfunction, some trauma, because this stuff is hard, right? The trial or contingent fee income, personal injury is not for the faint of heart. So growing up, it sounds like we both had some turbulence, right? In our unique strand of that, our experience. But that's what, being a lawyer is not easy stuff. So, we'll get into that. But so you had adversity. You got through, you were moving around a bit. You get to Atlanta. It sounds like, there's definitely challenges inside and outside the home. You were, I believe, in college at 19, a cop. Is that right? Is that when you became a police officer?
Yeah. So at the end of high school, I lost a few friends pretty quickly in rapid succession in crashes that involved drugs and alcohol. And I ended up doing a stint where I was an intern with the local police department who happened to get one of the first grants for a drinking and driving DUI task force. And so I was an intern there. And, law enforcement is a subculture. I found myself surrounded with lots of friends who were in law enforcement. And so I felt like I was back to that concept of where do you feel accepted and where do you feel something like that, if that resonates at all. I felt connected to that community, and I felt accepted by that community. And so as soon as I went off to college, I was applying for jobs as a police officer, and I got one. So I started policing. I was 19 years old. In the city of Atlanta. And I was, when I think back on it, and now that I have, my youngest child is 19, and I think, wow, that's crazy that I was wearing a gun and driving a police car. And I remember I was so young, Chris, and I looked so young that I went to break up a Halloween party one time. And everybody said, "Oh, that's so funny, man. You look just like a real cop." I was like, if you look outside the window, I even dressed up my car. It looks like a real freaking police car. It's a real ticket book, these real handcuffs, Like,
that's great.
It was crazy. I mean, if I'd have known, I'd have I'd pull up a picture of myself where I was trying to grow a mustache back then. I mean, I couldn't even grow a mustache. I mean, I looked like a cheesy, whatever. I don't know, but it was, but that time really, it was a hugely influential time in my life too, because I got to see literally a cross section of people from people who the worst thing that's ever happened to them is some kid knocked down their mailbox and they thought that that was trauma for them.
Yeah.
To 15 minutes later being in a situation where there was bodies cut up in a room and blood all over the place.
Wow.
So I got to really grow up, and when you do that, that's facing another kind of fear, because you start to realize, okay, like some of the things you'd see, and I know this sounds funny to say it, but I'd see some things and I'd say, somebody ought to call the freaking cops. Wait, I am the freaking cops.
You're 19.
I was a kid.
You're just a child.
Yeah. As a kid, but I was not dealing with kid things. I mean, they were very real, very real things.
But
so you
you
grow
found
up with
comfort in that space. It sounds like you felt.
I did. It's funny. You said before, it's funny how many people, especially on the plaintiff side of law, and come from these kinds of beginnings that you talk about. There's something to that, right? I mean, we all hate bullies. We all don't like bullies. We all feel somehow a compulsion to help our fellow people out who don't feel. We feel like we need to be the voice for them. We feel like we need to. We have a responsibility toward justice, and in a lot of ways, I think of myself now as a plaintiff's attorney, as just a police officer. In just a different, I wear a different uniform.
Yeah.
And I have better resources, and I don't have the power to arrest somebody, but I have the power to use the compulsory powers of the court to do some pretty crazy, powerful things.
Right.
And it's all of my cases end up being about trying to make a right about a bully, trying to take advantage of somebody else at some level. There's a betrayal at some level. And so you're like me in that regard. So in a lot of ways, we are kind of policing the world in our own way, in a civil way.
Right. It's a big responsibility. Be it a cop or a lawyer, there's a hefty responsibility society has.
They are.
Has
people don't realize that. People want, especially people who want to say, oh, you're chasing an ambulance, and look, the unfortunate reality is some of our brothers and sisters, I'm not so proud of them being part of our profession in the way they go about doing things. I hate to say that, but it's true.
No, I hear you.
But the vast majority of them, they're good people, and they're trying to do good by other people. They're trying to hold people accountable for things that they shouldn't have done.
So you strike me as a hard-working guy, right? You're a hard-driving guy, and I consider myself the same way. Now, I sometimes ask myself, am I working too much? Like, do I work? And I'm definitely present for my family. I make time. I don't regret anything about my, missing anything with my kids. But I sometimes wonder, am I trying to control this world of my work that I can't control as a business owner? No one can fire me, and I have autonomy, and this is my world that I can control. Does that resonate with you? Because I feel as if I'm probably right, because I have, like I said, like you, I can speak for myself, only trauma, that I'm healing from. I work on that all the time, but I'm sure I take my work a lot more serious maybe than the average bear. You strike me as a guy who really is intense and works your tail off. Or do you ever find that that's an outlet to avoid anything? Because I think for a time I was maybe trying to run away and not be like my father, who literally, Joey, became homeless. He was an executive man. He literally died on the streets. That's why I just wrote a book. So I'm very humbled by that. And I've always directed my efforts to, like, my dad went right, I got to go left. I wonder sometimes if I'm going left too hard. And
right, yeah, you can go left so far that you come back right. Right. I mean, you made a 360, right?
And your ambition.
Well, so what the part that resonates with me is, I mentioned earlier, being sandwiched between my dad and my son, which makes me an addict also. That's what I was referring to really is work for me. I'm a workaholic, and I know people use that word kind of nonchalantly, and sometimes even with like as a badge of honor.
Right.
for me, two parts are true. One, I come from stock that believes that I am only as good as what I produce. That my role is to be a producer, and I'm worthy of love to the degree that I produce. I'm worthy of respect to the degree that I produce. In other words, I'm not worthy of those things unless I am producing. And I've worked on that a lot, which is why I now understand it. But for decades of my life, I was just trying to be worthy. If that makes sense. I was just trying to be enough. I was just trying to have people look and say, okay, you're not, you're I respect you. And I guess I was also trying to respect myself in the process. And so that's part of that. The other part of it on the addiction side of things is, I think anything can be an addiction when even things that seem positive on the front end, if what they are being done for, so you have to ask yourself not what's being done, but why, right? So for me, work was a way that I could avoid other things.
Yes.
If I was having a rough time with my wife, I just had to go to work. If there was if I was having a bad time with my dad when he was alive, I just go to work, and I could lose myself in my work with this altruistic thing that I was there to help other people, but I could lose myself in the very same way that if I'd have stuck a needle in my arm, I'd have gotten lost for a period of time. And I recognize that. And so to some degree, that fueled my success because I also prided myself and nobody would outwork me. And it sounds like you're the same way. I didn't care if I had an army of people against me. I'd say, bring them.
100%.
Bring them. Nobody's going to work harder than me. Right.
Yeah.
So that was my life for a long time. Now, I have worked on these things really hard for the last decade of my life. And I'm in a very different place now than I was then. Because
what have you
understand
done? What kind of work? What kind of work are you talking about?
Well, first of all, I mean, I'm a faculty of the Trial Lawyers College, which went through a big breakup over the course of the last, over the last couple of years, let's just say. But back in the old days, the Trial Lawyers College was held at a ranch. You would go to it, and it was where I was exposed to something called psychodrama, which is a terrible name for one of the most powerful things I've ever experienced in my life, which it is a branch of psychotherapy. It's experiential group psychotherapy where you reenact things from your life and it under the direction of a professional, and people in the group play different roles, and it is so profoundly powerful. And so that started me on a path to, and in fact, even putting myself on the faculty of that college, what it did, I mean, there was the part of me that would always say, well, I'm doing this so I could be more available and help more other people.
Yep.
Only part of that was true. The other part of it that was true is that it made it socially acceptable for me to go out there many times a year to basically do therapy. Because I was involved. And also allowed me, because I was on the faculty, I could also not participate in some of the exercises that I didn't want to participate in. So it allowed me the cover of not working or working. And all of those things are true. I don't mind admitting those things now, but they're not very flattering to admit. I mean, I manipulated my way through that like addicts do, right? Every addict is a master manipulator.
Oh, 100%.
And so when I look back on my life, I see how this addiction of mine has played out. And I don't do well. I don't do well thinking of myself as a victim. I always, that's not where I like to live. But thinking about it so that we can learn from it and move forward, that's good. I'm all good with that.
Personally, I am on a healing journey. I was for years very poorly adjusted. I was a very angry lawyer, Joe. I'd want to push your buttons. I'd want to needle you. I write about that in my book. I literally would try to provoke people to fight, hoping they didn't, take the bait, but just anger. So, and that that was my drug of choice was anger, I feel like, and I'm healing. I'm a work in progress. Do you feel, you said that was about 10 years ago when you started that journey that you just described. Is that when you
So it was actually more than that, but yeah.
Okay. Okay. So it's an evolution.
Go
right?
ahead.
It's the journey's never complete. But
It's very much an evolution.
Yeah, but it just sounds like you're self-aware. I don't think a lot of lawyers are self-aware enough, especially us guys and gals who come from real adversity, being aware of, we had such a great, I wish I was recording right before we started the actual recording, but we were really getting into it. To be aware, whether you're in a courtroom, you're on a podcast, you're at a football game, to just be aware of your surroundings, aware of your environment, and to be present. We talked about that. So being present, meditation, those things help me. Now, I'm going to ask you a question. I'm going to be honest. I do have a chip on my shoulder because, I wasn't supposed to succeed. I should have been a failure, and I'm not. So I'm going to show you. Does that resonate with you, or no? Because I feel like it's a negative thing, but I just had to be upfront and share that I do have a chip on my shoulder that my wife brings up a bit. Do you, or no?
Well, I used to have, I don't know if I have it in the same way that you're describing, but
Okay.
I used to have, the way I would have described it in my distant past is coming from, instead of I'd call it a chip on my shoulder, I just say I came from a place where I needed to prove my value, my worth, that I'm worthy of respect.
Okay.
Because you weren't going to, I came into the relationship expecting you not to respect me, and I had to do something to do that. And part of that would come out with aggression. So I'm going to be aggressive because I'm going to make sure you don't think I'm a wimp or
Right.
a pushover or whatever. And it was over the top. I mean, now with the training that I have now, when I see somebody approach me like that, I just kind of smile inside, right? Because I go, oh, I know where that's coming from. It's
Right.
not strength. It's actually the opposite of strength, right? I mean, it's coming from a place of not feeling okay. And, my last year, it's funny, the journey, last year I worked with this amazing coach. I know you said you listened to one of my other podcasts with
Yeah.
Maria Monroy, and
Yeah.
I've talked about the coaching a little bit, and this guy challenged everything in my world to the point now where I understand my ego in a very different way than I ever have before, and a lot of these things we're talking about are ego responses, right? I mean, especially when you feel like, if you think about it this way, if you think that your ego's job is to be constantly on the lookout, day and night, never a day off, for any time when you are being disrespected, underappreciated, and everything like that, not dissed, so to speak, right? And then to act from that place because it's not right. So it throws you into a place where you literally have a physiological response to feeling disrespected, son of a gun, and it can come out as aggression, it can come out as tears, it can come out as cutting somebody off in the car, it can, it can come out in a lot of different ways, but it's all an ego thing. And so once you understand that your ego is just doing what you trained it to do, you trained it to say when someone cuts you off in a car, they're disrespecting you. Well, is that even really true? Sometimes it might be, but most of the time, they don't even know who the hell you are.
Not you.
It's not about you at all. But we take it as about us, right? So anyway, I'm kind of going far afield.
You're
but
speaking my language, because I even 7 years ago, I would have been pretty pissed if you cut me off. I'd flip you the bird. Now, we get mellow with age, with kids and just age. I'm just more mellow. But the old me, I'd almost want to start a fight with you. Secretly hope you don't take the bait.
I will say that it's the journey that you've been on that makes you less. It's not just age, because there are
Right.
people who are 85 years old
Yes.
who still will react to the person cutting them off.
I know.
So one of the things that happened is something happened in your existence that changed the definition of respect for you, or disrespect. So I'll give you a quick example. Like some people, if I have an appointment with you and I'm late to the appointment with you, even before I'm late, you're already getting pissed because I'm going to be late. And late means disrespect, right?
Yes.
But the truth is, if I were to ask you, have you ever been late? Well, of course you've been late. Have you ever been late on purpose for the purpose of disrespecting the other person? Probably not, right? But yet you assume everybody who's late coming to you is disrespecting you personally, is personal to you. Well, I mean, so here's what's happened is you've trained your subconscious about that concept. If they're late, they're disrespecting you.
Yes.
So now you don't even have to watch your clock, because you know who's watching it for you? Your ego. Your ego's watching it. Even before it gets to late, your ego's already ready. Son of a bitch is about to disrespect me.
No.
And your blood pressure's going up.
Oh, yeah.
That guy's about to cut me off in the car. My wife's about to say that my kid's about to leave the damn light on again. How many times do I have to tell you, close the freaking refrigerator door? Close the door. You're air conditioning the street. What the hell's the matter with you? I mean, and you feel all of those things as disrespect because you trained yourself. So in your situation, when you said I've mellowed out, I would offer that probably what happened is somewhere in there, you had a moment when you said, you know what? If my kid leaves the door open, it really has nothing to do with me. It's not disrespect to me. So
Let it go.
Translates to you feeling more mellowed out. But unless that changes.
Right. Because, I read a lot about, I don't know if you're into stoicism and just, being present.
I read the Daily Stoic every day.
So do I.
And
I read the Daily Stoic.
And I've got the
Daily Dad.
I've got the Daily Dad over there. I've got the somewhere I've got the obstacle is the way somewhere around here.
I read the obstacle is the way. I'm just going to bring that up. It's one of my favorite books.
And Ryan Holiday is awesome.
Unreal.
Yeah, brilliant.
But
Brilliant.
I'm going to be honest with you here. I have for years chased money and cases and hustling for dollars. And until recently, I have a coach too. I have a few coaches. And that wasn't making me happy. Now I'm resetting my perception. I got enough. I'm loaded with blessings. I don't need to be affluent. I have more than enough. So just the gratitude thing, this is taking a different turn, but just the gratitude thing to me is neutral, and I'm really feeling it. So Ryan Holiday, the obstacle is the way, things like that. It's your perception. The guy cutting you off, give me the bird.
So
you're taking that perception in your head, what you believe, right?
That's right. You're making it either way. So every single moment, every single morning of my life, every single morning for well over a year now, because my coach, the last coach I had is the one who got me on this habit. Every single morning when I wake up, the first thing I do before my feet hit the ground is I take just a moment to be mindful of a few things I'm grateful for right then, and also something that I'm looking forward to. Those two things, just things that I'm grateful for right now, and something I'm looking forward to. And then my feet hit the ground. And before I go to sleep, the last thing I do before I go to sleep is I think of a couple things that I'm grateful for from my day, and something I'm looking forward to. And what my coach taught me, and I believe this now with every ounce of my being, is that it's all about mindset. You get to choose, and it has nothing to do. Here's the crazy part. The crazy part. It has nothing to do with your life circumstances. You can have your world can be crashing around you. You can be going through something that is ridiculously painful and traumatic, and you still can be grateful, and you still can be looking forward, and that will change your experience of your life.
100%. Right now it talks about Viktor Frankl, multiple concentration
camps. It's amazing. Yeah. Viktor Frankl and this.
That's otherworldly strength. I mean, I can't comprehend that strength, but that's intentional perception construction in your head, right? That you're designing. You're the architect, like you said. You're creating this.
It's amazing how much that's true, and it's so much true that there's other things, and we talked about this for a minute before we got on here also, and it's sort of this concept of outcome orientation.
Yeah.
From the time we're very, very little, we have this very well developed sense of what we need to have happen in terms of outcomes in order for us to be okay, successful, good, worthy, whatever word you want to put in there.
Yes.
They're all the same at the end of the day. They're all struggling for some recognition. and it's like, I've got to marry that woman, or that I got to have that guy as my boyfriend, or I've got to have that those letters at the end of my name, a degree. I got to get into this school. I've got to win this case. I've got to get this client. I've got to have this notoriety in order for me to be okay.
Yeah.
And then what that means is we've defined success, and everything short of that then is a fail, right? But here's the reality. Every single time we've ever done that, we really don't know what the best outcome is. We think we do. But every time we're making those decisions with incomplete, if not incorrect, information. So, I bet you and your listeners have all had the experience where you said, I got to get into this school. You don't get into that school.
Yes.
You get into some other school and you go, God, thank God. When you get to live long enough, you get to say, thank God I didn't get into that school.
Right.
Thank God that girl said no. Thank God, this happened. Even thank God for that which was painful and that which was traumatic for me.
I think it's a blessing.
I am grateful. This sounds funny for some people maybe, but I'm grateful to my father.
100%.
I'm grateful to the experiences that I had, as challenging as they were to me at the time to go through, and as painful as they were to go through. They prepared me to be able to be better in circumstances in my life. When I was a police officer, I saw things when I was a police officer that I had already experienced when I was a kid. I was able to be there for somebody in those situations. I'm thinking about one thing in particular. I'm not going to get into the details, but it's actually pretty emotional to think about. I was able to be there for that person, that young person, in a way that there's no way I would have been able to be there but for some of my early life experiences that I had had. And there was nobody else who was there for that kid at that time in that way. And all these years later, I've been a lawyer for 30 years, so it's been 30 plus years ago. All these years later, I think about that, and I think maybe that's the whole reason I was supposed to be a cop. Because I could be there in that one moment for that kid and make a difference.
Oh, I believe so.
There's all reason.
There's coherence to this insane.
So the gratefulness thing is not only to be grateful, the real place where you've crossed a barrier, a milestone, is when you can say to yourself, I'm grateful regardless of ... I'm grateful that I missed the flight. I'm grateful that because I trust that something great's going to happen, and I just didn't know what it was. So I can't wait to see what's going to be great about the fact that I just missed my flight. I can't wait to see what's great about not getting the client I just thought I was supposed to have, and I just spent 2 weeks trying to land. I can't wait to see what's great about just losing the case that I just had. I can't wait to see what's great about somebody just getting sick and passing away. That's the hard one.
Yeah.
I can't wait to see what's great about my kid going through a really hard time.
I can't imagine, Joe.
And obviously I'm thinking about my son in that, but I've gotten to live my life long enough now. I see this young man in recovery for 6 years, and he's amazing. He is amazing. And he's married now, and he's doing great. And he is such a servant leader now in his life already at a fairly young age because of the shit he went through. So is it bad for him to have gone through that? I am so grateful for it. I mean, I don't want to ever have to go through it again. Lord knows. And I know that there are some people who don't get to see their son come out of it. I'm very mindful of that.
Right.
I'm mindful about it still now. If the phone rings at 3 o'clock in the morning, I'm still mindful of it. Okay. And so I'm not, I'm rambling, but you get where I'm going. The part about gratefulness, the point that I'm trying to make is it's great to say I'm grateful for having just deposited $1 million in the bank. Can you also be grateful that you just had to write $1 million check to the freaking IRS? Right. Both sides of that, we can choose to either be grateful for or not. And my challenge to everybody who's listening to this is look for a way to be grateful for everything.
Absolutely.
That's when life really starts to turn in miraculous ways.
Well, I'm starting to get that. It's going to take time, but I'm on that journey. But I feel like, Joe, when you have that mindset, there's an abundance that comes, not just abundance, but it's you're going to be you're going to see such riches that are right in front of you. You're going to be so grateful, and the universe will reward you. I feel like the more grounded you are, the more grateful you are, the more you're going to get. But if you're always chasing that next case, that next client, it's a fool's errand, man. Like it's never going to fill the bucket.
I love what you're saying, and I even go further and say, when my coach used to, one of the things, his little sayings was, "There's nothing out there. There's nowhere to reach to that makes you suddenly complete.
Right.
You are 100% complete right now. This journey that you're on, it's not that there's not more wonderful places to go on this journey, but you're already complete, Chris. I mean, you already, like when and it's kind of a little small change in language, but it's when you say, like you said to me earlier, you said, I have enough. I say that to myself all the time, even though there are many, many times through the day where I don't feel it. I'll go, oh my God, I just forgot that I have enough. And now I'm acting like someone who doesn't have enough at all. And not only that, but someone who's afraid that he doesn't have enough. I'm acting like that. I can change that mindset now very quickly by just stopping, recognizing it, and saying, not beating myself up, because it doesn't do good to beat yourself up. What's good is just give yourself some grace in that situation and to say, isn't it interesting? Isn't it amusing that even with all the work I've done, I still have that in me? Isn't that interesting? I'm not beating myself up. I'm showing myself a little love and grace in that moment, saying, that's a part of me. It comes from stuff. We all know what it is, but I'm not defined by that. And now I can just let go of it and say, you know what? The truth is, to whatever part of me that I have to say this to, the truth is, I have so much. I am like the most blessed person in the world. You could take half my stuff away and I'm still going to have enough.
Absolutely. But what you just said was where I'm really working on myself, Joe, is that recognition, like, dude, you got enough. What don't you have? Let's move on. Right? For example, suppose you lose a trial. You can be devastated. You can say, I just got a ton of experience, great client. I'm going to go crush the next one. Or else you could just, be miserable, whatever life throws.
Well, you're true. If you're miserable, you're just miserable. It doesn't matter. You're miserable winning the case too. I didn't win enough. I should have asked for more.
Yeah.
I mean, whatever. But part of what it is for us lawyers, I think, is, and probably for many people who aren't lawyers, is, for trials, we put ourselves out there and we create these monikers for ourselves, that these like metrics for ourselves, not monikers. Like, I'm only as good as my last time out, which means that if I lose my case, then I'm a piece of shit lawyer.
Right.
Right. The truth is, here's the truth. The truth is, if I win my case or if I lose my case, guess what? I'm the same exact person. I'm exactly the same person if I win or if I lose.
Change you. No.
So but I have to remind myself of that. I have to remind myself that, then there's that part of me that pops up and says, yeah, but what will everybody think? They're all going to think, oh, Joe really wasn't that good after all. That's not what they think. That's really not. You go lose a case and you know what? People go, thanks for taking it all the way. If you're only taking cases that you're only going to win, well, how great of a lawyer are you then?
Right.
Take the challenges and just let go of this idea that if it doesn't work out, then you're not good. That's not true. It's just plainly not true. The part of you that believes that is lying to you. So
I think in trial, if a trial lawyer is thinking that, see, the jury will pick up on that energy. I think energy is there's energy on this call, there's energy in the courtroom, energy everywhere. But if you're that lawyer who never has enough, like, people pick up on that kind of stuff, right? And so if you're authentic,
absolutely.
And it's like, I'm a grateful man. I'm just here to, I'm doing my job. That's all this is. It's a job, right? It's like we're advocating. At the end of the day, we can't dictate the jury's outcome. As you said, outcome. We can't control that. But you can just control your headspace and how you argue your case, and that's it. That's all you can do, and that's not going to change.
There are many lawyers who will listen to this who will push back on the idea that you don't control the outcome. It took me an effort. It took me an effort to get to a place where I now believe that I am not responsible at all for the outcome. I'm just responsible for my action and pushing forward. And
Right,
then what
right.
happens
That's it.
is in forces that are beyond me. But here's the cool thing of where I've gotten to in my life is I am open. I know that whether I win the case or don't win the case, something awesome is going to happen. What do you mean, Joe? Is it only if you win? No, not only if I win. I don't control the outcome, and I am convinced, because I believe that the universe is conspiring in my favor, not against me,
I like it.
that
I like that.
that something great's going to come. I just don't know. So literally, I get to sit there and go, if I were to lose, I literally get to say, I can't wait to see how this is going to be great, because it for sure feels crappy right now. But I know that the universe, I know that something great's going to come from this. And whether it's I have a lesson to learn and it's going to make me better in another case, or maybe it's that the client's going to grow in a way that's different than they would have had I won the case. Maybe it's juror number 4 saw something that happened. Maybe it's the judge. Maybe it's the bailiff. Maybe it's somebody who's just sitting in the courtroom. I don't even know the names. And they go out and change the world because of what happened in the courtroom. And I didn't even get to know. So we talked about this before the show. The human animal is so self-centered. We think we're the star in everything.
All about us.
And
it's all us.
It's all about us. Well,
right now.
I hate to break it to you.
Right.
Because I hated it when it was broken to me. It really is very, very few things are about me at the end of the day.
Absolutely.
And
That's-
the more
that's
I can
true.
surrender that, the quicker I can surrender that, the better I can be as a human being and also as a lawyer, because it keeps the ego in check, and it keeps the lie about that you're not enough at bay. Because so many of the people I speak to, both lawyers and not, I think this is kind of the universal human condition and challenge, is to feel worthy just because you are here and you're alive and you're a human being and you're worthy of love and you're worthy of respect just for that. You don't have to do a damn thing in order to be worthy of those basic human things. But we've been taught, too many of us have incorporated early in our lives this idea that we have to work for our worthiness. We have to work for respect. We have to work for and I'm not talking about that everybody deserves the same necessarily even.
Right.
But at a core level, every human being is valuable. Every human being, if we just, the people who don't believe that, I think it's their problem, not the person who they're seeing's problem. It's just do we have the eyes to see in the homeless person? Look, you told me just a few minutes ago that your dad, ended up on the street.
Literally, Joe.
Literally.
I saw him. There was a kid. I saw that.
Yeah, and tell me that didn't have an impact on you.
Oh,
Or tell me
trauma.
that doesn't still have an impact on you today.
All
right?
day long, Joe. And work in progress. Healing.
Sure,
Healing.
it's work in progress. And so, but in his toughest place, in his toughest state, I see this. I use this in my law world and in my human world all the time. Our cases, a lot of what we're doing as lawyers is about asking a jury to restore respect and dignity into a situation.
Yes. Yep.
The defense says this man is so old that his life's not worth very much anymore. Is that the world we want to live in? A world where we don't put value on somebody because they're 80 years old? It's a homeless person and they're on the street. And look, here's why we're here. They say this person's life is worthless because he's homeless and he's not earning money.
Right.
And if that's the world that we want to live in, then ladies and gentlemen of the jury, then just put a small number on this piece of paper and that will be the world we live in. But how about, the concept of redemption? How about the concept of hope? How about the concept of, how we judge the least of us is how we shall be judged? Who is the least of us? Who gets to decide that? The person who ran over the homeless person, that's the guy who gets to decide what the homeless person's life is worth? No, that's why we have you here.
Yeah.
You get to decide for our community. So anyway, I'm pontificating, but
I
think there's a lot to it.
All right, that's it for this episode of The Earley Show. Be sure to check out more episodes of our show on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and the Answering Legal YouTube channel. Stay tuned for part 2 of my interview with Joe Freed on the next episode of The Earley Show.